guys?
Hi, guys.
Hey, we want to just take a couple minutes and walk you through our hiring process that we go through for anyone that we're hiring, for anyone in the organization that is at a higher level than custodians or childcare workers.
Correct.
So anybody that's a coordinator or filling any type of role, whether it's part-time or full-time, this is our process that we use. And we've worked on this for really a couple years now to refine it and make sure it really works well. So I'm going to walk through the 9 steps that we have, and then we're going to just rewind and talk through a couple things that we need for you to do in order for this process to be effective. So we'll start with number 1. This all starts with you making the decision that you need to hire somebody. And what we'd ask for you to do is create the job description and notify HR. Once you do that, and if you do that well, and we'll spend a lot of time talking about that particular piece, it really sets up the success of the rest of the process. If we get step number 1 done correctly and really done well, it really releases the HR team, which is you in a lot of ways, and maybe a couple people else
Yes.
that are on your team. It releases them to move everything forward very quickly. But if that first step isn't done well, it kind of slams on the brakes for you and
Yes,
and your team.
absolutely.
Okay, so once you notify HR and give them the job description, Bethany and everyone that she's working with, they can make sure that that gets posted to all the appropriate areas, and you can even weigh in on that in that initial process when you notify HR, where we're going to look for people. You'll receive resumes, you'll review them, you'll look through them, and at each step, you make the decision, should they move on to the next step. So once you get a resume, you're going to go through resumes, and some of them are going to look good, some of them are going to look bad, and you'll be able to take the bad ones and just toss them out, and good ones, and you advance them to step number 4, okay? When somebody has a really good quality resume, they seem like they're a good candidate, we move them on to number 4, which is the email questions in the disc. Maybe talk about what that looks like real quick.
Sure, it's just a short questionnaire that gets sent to them, as well as the free disc test that they take online. So they have like a week to fill it out, and it just asks them some basic questions so we can get an idea of, is this someone that we could even see in our organization? Yep,
and they're very simple questions, and it's kind of just making sure they pass what I call the sniff test.
Yes.
Should we even move them on to having an interview? The people that pass that sniff test, we move them on to the next interview, which is the preliminary interview that you typically do by phone, correct?
Yes, so on the phone or video chat with them, and that gives us a great way to see, again, just dive a little deeper into if they're going to be, in general, a good fit for APC. I'm not diving deep into any of the specifics on the job or anything like that.
Mm-hmm. And then if they do well there and you recommend that they move on, then we do an in-depth interview. The in-depth interview can last anywhere from an hour and a half to 2 hours. And we have, right now our team consists of 3 people. It's me, Dave Leake, and Vince Arnone, who are doing the in-depth interview. And that is really diving in deep to all of the competencies and any concerns that we've had based on the previous stuff. And we hit that hard, and we'll write up a full summary at the end of that. Once we do that, we move on to the next step. If we still feel good about them, and maybe we realize some things that they're not a good fit after that in-depth interview and they don't move on. But if they do, then we start checking references. The references are designed for us to contact somebody that's a previous boss to see if everything we're seeing aligns, if it all makes sense. If we have concerns, we can address those things specifically. And then at that point in time, after we contact references, you as the hiring manager should have all of the information that you need to go into your last interview, and that's your opportunity to have the final conversation. And you want to get clarity on anything that is lacking, so that at the end of your interview with them, and that can be a lunch, it can be a phone call, however you set that up, it's going to be different depending on the position. At the end of your final conversation with them, you should be ready to make a decision. And the decision should be, yes, we want to hire them, or no, we don't. And at any point in time before step number 9, we always can make the decision that no, this person isn't the right thing for our organization. But if the decision is yes, we take them all the way through 1 through 9.
Correct. It's designed to weed people out as we go, so that each step we're eliminated candidates.
Mm-hmm. And each step gets a little bit more in-depth. So we're going to be able to weed people out very quickly early in the process. And when we make a larger investment in time into a candidate, it's because they've proven that they are a really likely candidate that we want to really dig deep into them as a possibility. Okay, so let's rewind all the way to step number 1, because steps 2 through 9 really all start with us doing number 1 well. So creating that job description. Everything that we do is based on that job description. So talk to me a little bit about what you need to be successful in completing the final 8 steps of the process through that job description. How can that really help you be successful if that's done well?
Sure. So it's really all about knowing what are the main things that we're looking for this candidate. So what are the skills and abilities that they need to have? What are the experiences that they need to have had? If there are certain things on the list that are must-haves, if they have to have some sort of ministry training, then those are things that are easy to weed people out for if we know that ahead of time. And also, what kind of person are we looking for? Is this a leadership position? Do they need to be able to recruit? Or is this an admin position and they're just managing processes? So knowing that ahead of time at the very beginning is what sets me up for success to find the right candidate. And sometimes it's a process to figure out what, for the manager to wrestle with of what kind of person do I want in this position. But until you know what that is and we get that on paper as a job description, I can't move forward in finding that perfect candidate if we haven't identified what that candidate looks like.
Yep. And it seems like, if you look at the board, everything in green is the HR team. Even the blue part is the interview team is a part of HR. A lot of this process is done without you having to be heavily involved with it as a manager. But it only can be done well if that first step is completed well. Maybe talk a little bit about how some job descriptions can make it difficult for you, or even have some real life examples of how it was confusing when you got the job description and it didn't really help you accomplish what you were looking for.
Sure. So a good example of this would be if we decided we're going to recruit from the outside for someone for a central services position, whether that's in facilities or something like that. But one of the job requirements was being involved in a life group and being a member of our church. Well, those things are very unlikely that anyone from the outside is going to be involved in a life group. And so that just raised a question of, well, what are the spiritual requirements for this position? Is this something where they're going to be leading others spiritually, or is this something where we just need them to have the skills? And so that's obviously super important to know going in. It can be very confusing on a job description.
So that number 1 step, if somebody creates a really clear job description, they can just pass that off to you and say, hey, Bethany, I want to hire this position. Can you post this and get as many candidates as you can? They give you the piece of paper and it's done. But it doesn't have to be that black and white because there might be some questions that you have. You're actually willing to take that job description, look at it, and set up a conversation.
Yes.
It could be 10, 15 minutes
Correct.
And just say, so tell me about that. And that gives you the ability to ask questions. But what we would ask for anybody that is a hiring manager is create that job description, notify HR, but it always is better to have that conversation. So how does that work out if someone has the job description, but you have questions? What do they do at that point in time?
So the best thing to do is just to set up a time with me. If I have questions, if you've already submitted it to me, I'll reach out to you. But the best thing to do is just set up a time with me. We can sit down and talk through the job description and talk about the kind of person that you could see filling this role and what are the key things that you want or don't want in the role. And if I see something in the job description that you've given me that doesn't make sense, that gives me the opportunity to ask those questions to get that clarity up front so that I can then deliver the candidates that make the most sense for that role. So I think part of it is taking that time as the manager to dream, I guess, if you will, to plan and strategize of what kind of person do I really want, and nailing that down before we take any further steps, because that's really key.
That's great. So one thing that I just want to talk about with this process has been through a ton of revisions, and we really feel like we've landed it on something that is very effective. It's really important to understand why we have this process in place. This is designed for us to be able to get the best quality candidates and move them through the process so that we can ultimately hire the best person. There's an old saying that goes back a long time that says you want to hire slowly and fire quickly. The reason for that is it's incredibly difficult to remove somebody from a position once you hire them. So you want to make sure that you get it right the first time. Take your time. There's always that tension of, I need somebody now. I have a vacancy, there's a hole, and it's so painful for me to have this hole. And the temptation is, let's just hire someone very quickly when they're available. But when you get that wrong person in that spot, it ends up being more painful, and you have to go through another transition. So this process is designed to help us get the right person in the position the first time, and it has a lot of checks and balances in it to prevent us from just jumping the gun and doing something too soon and get the right person in there. The speed of this is it's not super fast, but there's a reason for that. It's designed that way, and we want to catch different things that we could miss if we rush the process so that we get the right person in place. So what I would ask of anybody that is looking to hire is take this process seriously. It's not just, okay, step 1, step 2, step 3, right. Can we hire the person now? Because each one of these steps is designed to just slow us down enough to get a full evaluation and get the right candidate, because finding that right person takes a while, and if you hire the wrong person, it also is very painful to take them out of that spot and replace them. So any closing thoughts that you have for anyone looking to hire?
I just would love to talk with you guys about the positions as they arise, and look forward to finding the right person for the right spot.
Awesome. Thanks, Bethany.
Thanks.